the top 10 questions that I get as a mastering engineer and my answers to those questions. So the first question is, what is mastering and the role of a mastering engineer? So the entire job of mastering engineer, in my opinion, is quality control for the song, also to actually master the song. So mastering the song, I like to view as the stylist of the music production process, right? So if we equate mixing to the personal trainer, they're meant to get the person in shape, and then the stylist is meant to put on the final touches to essentially accentuate whatever the mix has done great and de-emphasize whatever the mix hasn't done great. So right, if they're a little bit fat around the middle, I'm not going to probably wear like a skin tight shirt to kind of show that off. I'm going to try to maybe make a little looser shirt so they don't really notice that quite so much. So that essentially is mastering, as simple as I can explain it, at least as of right now. And then the role of a mastering engineer, I mentioned, is quality control. And that's really, I think, the true value in hiring a mastering engineer, is that a mastering engineer will be able to listen to your song and tell you, is it actually ready to be put out there? A good mastering engineer is going to give you feedback and push back on you as the mixing engineer if it is not at that pro quality yet. They're going to push back. They're going to tell you to make updates before they even master the song. So that is, in my opinion, the number one role is quality control and ability to give feedback to a mixing engineer or a artist, whoever is on the other end hiring the mastering engineer to do their job. 2, is mastering always necessary? Yes, it is. That may look different for different artists. Sometimes you might be sending that to a professional mastering engineer, or you might be mastering it yourself. But yes, the act of mastering needs to be done for every single song for it to be professional. If you have no clue what you're doing mastering, I have a cool little mastering checklist right down below this video that you can pick up and go master your own song for free. Check that out if you are interested in that. Question 3, what kind of improvements can be expected from mastering? This is a great question because there's kind of two sides to this. So one is it's going to be louder and it's going to be clearer and it's going to be more full. Those are kind of the generic terms that we use as mastering engineers or mixing engineers talking about mastering. Yes, obviously it's going to sound better after it's mastered. However, when you master something, it's going to bring out two things. It's going to bring out everything that's really great about the song, but it's also going to bring out every single mistake that was ever made in the entire song from start to finish, from the songwriting process all the way through the final mix bus compressor. All of those issues are going to come up inside of the master, and you're going to be able to clearly hear every single one of those mistakes. So that is the downside to mastering. So basically, if you have a really bad mix, mastering is not going to do you any favors because mastering is actually going to maybe hide some of those, but mostly it's going to bring out the fact that this is a bad mix. Versus if you have a really great mix, then mastering is only going to emphasize all the things that were already great about the mix, and it's going to sound even better with a great master. So that's kind of the caveat there. So if you have kind of an amateurish mix, I would just fix the mix before you ever hire somebody to master your song. Mastering is not a magical solution. It won't fix your mix. You need to fix your mix in the mix, and then mastering is kind of that cherry on top, that, stylist role for your song. Okay, so number 4, what are some tips on getting the best master possible? So number 1 is make sure you find a mastering engineer that's going to give you some feedback so you can actually have like a back and forth discussion with them before they actually master the track. So make sure that you can actually contact them and they're reachable. So that's number 1 tip, is make sure you get a mastering engineer that has good communication. Number 2 is make sure you leave some room on the mix bus. Don't put a limiter on your mix bus. That's the mastering engineer's job, not the limiter solely, but if you put a limiter on your mix bus and then send it to somebody, there's only so much you can do with that audio, versus if I did not have the limiter, I have a lot more freedom and control over the actual mastering process, dynamically speaking. The other thing that I would mention is make sure that your mix is actually finalized. The mix is as good as it possibly can be before you send it to your mastering engineer, unless you've talked about sending them some revisions within, a few of the mix revisions just to get their feedback. That's a completely different thing. But when you're actually ready to master, make sure that you are actually have the finalized mix. I can't tell you how many times I've mastered a song, sent it back, and then, it brings out something that they didn't like in the mix, and they're like, I want to remix it, and then send it to you again. So just to avoid that scenario altogether and then getting charged twice for the same master, just make sure your mix is actually finalized. And again, if your expectation is that they give you feedback prior to the mastering process, then let them know that. Just be communicative. Number 5 is, how much will mastering cost? That's a great question. If you're hiring a professional, the going rate for most mastering engineers is around $100 a song. Some are a little bit cheaper, some are much more expensive, but the average rate, I would say, is around $100 per song. So that's what you can kind of expect. And I would say that it is on 100% worth it if you are getting actually quality feedback on your song. That's the one thing, is that if I'm going to send a song to a mastering engineer, they might be able to give me a great master, but if they're not going to give me great feedback on my mix, then I really don't want to work with them. And that's my own personal preference, and also why I always give feedback on mixes before I master them, master songs, is because that's how I wanted to be treated as the artist or the mixing engineer going to other mastering engineers in the past. Most mastering engineers do charge per song. Sometimes you'll get an album discount if it's multiple songs. Some mastering engineers charge hourly, but I don't find that to be very common. And obviously, if you're mastering yourself, then it should be free. You shouldn't have to pay AI anything to master your song. You can master your song much better than AI ever could. Number 6 is, how much of a role does gear play versus the talent of a mastering engineer? And I'm relatively extreme with this, because if you've seen my setup, it's very basic. And I've still been able to outmaster mastering engineers with $500,000 studios. So I don't think that gear has almost anything to do with mastering. And I know that is very triggering for some who have spent thousands of dollars on gear. Please leave your hate down below in the comments, and I would be happy to read it. So anyway, but all joking aside, I really do believe that you don't need incredible gear to master. Sure, there are a few plugins that I use on pretty much every single master that I wouldn't give up, but at the same time, my talent as a mastering engineer, or the skill of a mastering engineer, is far outweighs any of the gear that I have. Because again, I've gone head to head with other mastering engineers that have all of the fancy equipment, and I've still produced better masters that the artist chose me over the other mastering engineers because of the skill and the quality of the master. They didn't care that I didn't have, all of the fancy mastering specific gear or analog equipment, because I'll be honest, I master 100% in the box, and it sounds amazing. Number 7 is, should you choose a mastering engineer based on their style? And I would say 100% yes. Mastering engineers are just like a mixing engineer. You have your own inclination as a mastering engineer. So some mastering engineers will tend to master really hot, meaning very loud. Other mastering engineers are going to be very, very subtle in their movements and not master very loud. Some are very extreme with their sonic balances, where they're going to just crank certain things if they think the mixing engineer didn't quite nail the sonic balance, and other mastering engineers are going to be very, very subtle in their moves. So again, there is a spectrum on both sides. What I recommend, especially if you're working on a longer project where it's if it's an album or something like that, where you are going to be spending significant amount of money, $500 or more on getting your songs mastered, then I would highly, highly recommend you to send a single to multiple mastering engineers and then choose from there, because then you'll be able to see which mastering engineer did the best job for your song and also aligns with your preferences, and then you can choose a mastering engineer from there. It's going to give you way more data, and you're going to be much more happy with the end product of your release at the end of the day. And then number 8 is, did I go to school for audio? And the answer is no. I have a degree in accounting, and I do not have a mastering or engineering degree. However, I have learned all of those skills talking to other mastering engineers, talking to mixing engineers, actually doing the thing, which a lot of people, for some reason in the mixing and mastering space, we think that we have to learn all of the things, but then we don't actually learn the skill because we don't actually practice it. And so, yes, knowledge is great. And I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on courses, on education, on mentors to be able to get that education specifically. But that was only half the battle. I actually needed to go out and do the thing, basically master people's songs, to be able to learn the actual skill of mastering. And so I think a lot of people avoid actually doing something, and they instead just learn stuff mentally. And intellectually. So if you intellectually understand something, you don't truly understand it. You only understand it once you've actually done the thing and found out where the problems actually are, and then you'll be able to move on successfully from there. So anyway, all that said, no, I do not have a degree in audio, and I am very against most audio degrees because I think they're a waste of money, because you're going to spend $50,000 a year or maybe $40,000 a year getting an education that you could otherwise get for a couple $1,000. You could get a much higher education just online with other people teaching you how to master and mix and anything else you want to learn in audio production, songwriting, anything. There's a ton of people out there who are happy to sell you education that's way higher quality than any university. There's basically no value in having a slip of paper that says, I jumped through some hoops for 4 years. It doesn't actually mean you're good at your craft. And that's ultimately the only thing people care about in music is, are you actually good at it? That's why people hire me over other people with $500,000 studios, because maybe they have really fancy gear, but I think they're probably good at what they do, but I don't know. People still hire me. So anyway, all that to say, no, I don't have a degree. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed the top 8 questions that I get as a mastering engineer. If you did, then go ahead and check out the guide down below. It teaches you step by step how to master your song. It's just a very basic framework. Again, it's not going to cover all of the intricacies of mastering because I can't in a 5-page PDF document capture every single corner scenario to teach you how to master inside of a PDF. But if you have a decently good mix, that is going to get you 95% of the way there for most songs. So go ahead, check out that guide, the mastering checklist down below, and I will see you in the next video.